Welcome everyone to Chico Unscripted. Our mission is to bring the world's most consequential voices to African presidents, leaders, decision makers, investors, so that they can be able to make good decisions, good policies for African people. It is a pleasure of mine today to host Dr. Anthony Chibo-Christopher to talk about Africa and talk about the challenges and opportunities that are facing the continent today. Doctor reached out to us right after our interview with Dr. Robert Pape, and he said, I've been speaking and writing about this topic for many years. I went and read his articles and I was impressed, and I said, we have to have him part of the conversation so that Africans can get an African voice speaking to our leaders about where we are today, especially this post-Trump era, especially this Iran war that is ongoing. So, Doctor, I want you to tell us, why should African leaders listen to you? What is your track record? What is your background? What is your expertise? And why should they and their leadership teams pay attention to what you're saying and what you're writing?
Thank you for having me, Chico. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I am an African development activist. I've been on a mission to contribute to Africa's development for many years now. I am an economist. I am a geo-economic strategist and advisor to governments. And the world has changed and is changing very, very, very fast. And is changing in ways that African leaders have to take note of, because it's changing in ways that are more consequential. Our mistakes will be more consequential than even the mistakes or the inactions that took place many years ago in the 18th century up to the 1914s, just after the scramble for Africa. So this time we're here, and this time we can speak out. And this time we have the knowledge and the research on what is going wrong and what should be done to make things go right. So that's why they should listen. My name is Dr. Anthony Chibo-Christopher, and I'm a geo-economic strategist. I also practice game theory as part of my economic analysis for predictions. And it's interesting. Africa is at an interesting time. Africa is in the crossroads. We get it right, then we get it right. We get it wrong, and we are doomed. Sorry to put it that straight, but that's why we're speaking. That's why I reached out.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think that we are at a turning point. I'm happy that you brought up history. Maybe you could take us through a little bit of history as to what were those times that were also as consequential for Africa? What did the leaders do in those times that have set us up for failure or success so far? And also, how does it relate to today where we are?
Oh, thank you for that question. You see, throughout much history, Africa has been disunited. We have been in disunity. Now, that's interesting because we didn't even know each other. I am from Nigeria, and when you go back to history, did the Nigerian from the eastern coast actually look at the Ghanaian or the Togolese or the Kenyan as a brother 200 years ago? Not really. He didn't even know he existed, or maybe he did, but it wasn't part of his life. That's why I said, now we know each other. Now we know the mistakes that we made before, because, you see, Africa's disunity has been exploited all these years. And this is why Africa today has to see themselves as one. Understandably, I've explained, we didn't see ourselves as one. Geography, technology, and distance didn't allow us to see us one. But colonialism actually exploited our not knowing each other. And slave trade was There wasn't, can I give an example? There wasn't one big West African empire. I wish there was. From the coast of Senegal all the way to the borders of Cameroon, that united everybody, as imperial as it may be, but it united everybody, brought everybody under one commerce and therefore one military force, and therefore we could mitigate the coming of the Portuguese and the British. That never happened. And because we were it may be 19, 14, 46 different little states. And by God, if you really want me to be very exact, we were almost 1,000 little states and different languages. And each person, each tribe, each community had to deal and mitigate all the dangers and all the attacks that came from outside. Alone. There were no alliances. Now, guess what? That is exactly what we must not do. We are 54 right now. And the only way we survive what is coming, which I'll be explaining, is to act as not 54 different states, but to act as one state. Now, I will get into how that is done, because the 54 cannot act exactly as one at the same time. We need like 4 or 5 different states that are dedicated to come together and begin to cooperate economically. And then it grows. When this economic union comes together in earnest, there's a lot to explain here, then others will see the benefits, and believe me, there are benefits. I give you live examples as we talk of the benefits of the Sahel states, who are together today because they have some kind of a unity. But I digress a little. So the divisions that we had before is what brought about our history. The divisions that we have now is what is about to bring about our history again. And our history in the past was not funny and good. And we cannot allow these divisions right now, economic divisions, to bring about another pain in our history, because what is coming is even stronger and more vicious than the dividing of Africa by Europe, starting from 1884 to 1885, all the way to 1914. This one will be more vicious. I dare say even a little bit more desperate, direct, not necessarily very loud, but Africa must take that immune injection, immune itself from that now, and that immunity injection is economic unity.
Okay. Doctor, I've been an advocate of African leadership for many years, and I've trained, young leaders across the continent. I used to believe that together in unity, we have more power, and that we are able to inspire change in leadership and be able to build our countries for our own people. And I used to believe this because I thought that's what needed to be done during the times of the independences. That's what the leaders were supposed to do. That's how they were supposed to lead their nations, that they were supposed to come together, find what's best for their nation, and be able to do it. But something you said that happened at that time has never changed, was that each African nation was dealt with as one, was negotiated with as one. And so the colonial powers for each African state, depending on the interest that they had in those states, they modeled that state in their interest. And so the leaders that were put into those countries, the leaders and the leadership and the judicial system and the trade agreements that were put for the interest of the colonizer. And the African presidents who went against that were either named as dictators, there were coups that were fomented to kick them out, or their economies were just wrecked so that someone else can come in who's more favorable to them. Today, it's less noisy. There are less coups that are fomented against the leaders. Today, there are many different bilateral partners that Africa has, China, Turkey, other partners who come, that makes it harder for the same things that were happening before to happen. However, the leadership has not much evolved. A lot of the leadership across the continent is still focused on their personal country's interests. And in order for them to be able now to have this united Africa of 54 countries, there has to be an ideal, there has to be a common vision, there has to be one leadership that brings them all together. That's leadership that I am looking for. That's the leadership that I'm hoping that we can inspire. But unfortunately, the African Union doesn't bear that leadership. Unfortunately, the Africans themselves, the African leaders themselves, have so many internal issues to deal with that coming up with a Pan-African vision is more of a risk to your own internal stability than it is for the sovereignty of the continent, or the image of your country being the one pushing for Pan-Africanism. If we're gonna be very pragmatic, right, from your experience and your research, what are the levers that African leaders have to bring each other together? The Sahel states is a good example, but it's a different example because it's a military group, and they had military objectives. They had internally, each of them had conflicts that they need to protect themselves from, that brought the unity of the three nations. If it wasn't led by military leaders, I doubt that we'd be talking about the AES association today. So pragmatically, on the ground, how can African leaders build this block? And then what do you see as the tangible actions that are being done so far that can help achieve that objective?
What we really need is sacrifice. Sacrifice. And what do I mean by sacrifice? It's very important because it just takes one person willing to put the good of his people first, not even Africa, his people, the good of his people before the status quo. Now, Africa is not doing well. We are underdeveloped. Education is poor. Healthcare is poor. Transportation is poor. Our currencies don't match. We are not doing well. So, what I mean by sacrifice here is that one leader, let's start with one leader that is ready to sacrifice everything, his well-being, to ensure that his people have good education, world standard education, world standard health, world standard status for negotiation in commerce. Let's start there. Let's not go grand. Let's start with one leader. Why I'm confident that this is what is needed is because that leader will soon find out that he cannot achieve that without the help of his neighboring leader and his other neighbor leader and the one south or north of him. So let's go back. It just takes one leader to say, hey, I need to develop my people. And I don't care what it costs me personally. Now I am saying in his quest to do that, to achieve that, he will soon find out, because of the global order we have, that he cannot achieve that without the help of at least 2 or 3 of his other leaders around him, because he's disadvantaged. He cannot neo-import substitute because he will be played out. So he can't import substitute. He can't build up his industries in the kind of world we have now, because there's already a system on ground, a global world order that ensures and propagates and makes sure that all he can do comfortably, he can do some things uncomfortably, but all he can do comfortably is to export and not to add value to what he's exporting. That's what this global system propagates and encourages right now. So if he was to produce which is the backbone of any step you're going to take towards development, manufacture, produce, turn your raw materials by yourself, add value to them, and try and export or use if you have a good population, he will soon find that he is one country trying to do the right thing in a global effort to suppress him. And so he would need, at the minimum, 2 or 3 other countries to come together and unite economically. Now, that would mean that he needs 2 or 3 other people that are willing to sacrifice. Because to change the system from what it is to what actually benefits Africa, it's a serious uphill task. And the truth has to be told. Why is it a serious uphill task? Because the system is so geared up. I'm talking of the world economic systems, the loan systems, the IMF, the World Bank systems, the encouragements, the strategies are all geared up to maintain the system as it is now. Systems do not like change. Systems do not have anything within them that helps the system change, even if it's for the better. Better for who? That's a good question. But what it does is systems are there to inherently maintain the status quo. Now, if you are going to develop Africa or your country in this status quo, then you are going to sacrifice something. And you're going to sacrifice everything. So the first and foremost thing in answering your question is that we need 1, maybe 2 or 3 African leaders that are willing to sacrifice. Now, those people come together and begin to negotiate everything economically. Don't forget what their goals are. Their goals are actually to develop their people. Now, they begin to negotiate everything as one body. When people there's really no differentiation at the end of the day between a political agreement of unity and economic. If you're going to actually stand as an economic body in Africa, actually contributing to yourselves, doing what you know is good, then you will eventually find that you are forced or encouraged to take conglomerative and unifying political decisions to defend your own borders, even though you're all 3 or 4 or 5 different states. So before we go into anything that we would say is what Africa must do, I hope I am expressing clearly that it is sacrifice, sacrifice, and sacrifice. But that cannot happen at once. No way. We need 1, 2, 3, 4 countries to come together, preferably across regions, to do that. And so that's a very important thing. Sacrifice. Sacrifice is what is needed. And I'd like to end this answer of your question with the word sacrifice. Sacrifice by the leader.
Sacrifice. So the leader has to sacrifice his own life. He has to sacrifice his own personal interests. He has to sacrifice the short-term benefits that come from, politicking and just focusing on gaining, to think about the long-term vision of his people. And I think even beyond sacrifice, they also have to be empathetic of their people. They need to be patriotic. They need to have a love for their country to the point that they want their grandchildren to grow up in that country, to the point that they are willing to sacrifice the gains that they can make now, sending their children to the best schools across the world now, and say, I want the best schools to be in my country. I totally agree with that, Doctor.
Yeah.
So let's come back to your article.
Okay.
You published an article a few weeks ago, I believe, that said that the post-Trump world order, Africa 2030 to 2060. And I want us to discuss a bit of why this article. What do you call the post-Trump world order? And how does it relate to where Africa is today and where Africa is going over the next 30 years?
Yeah, so the post-world order, the post-Trump world order is the order we live in now. And that's a situation where the reality that globalization was just what I would call simulated or managed dependency. Managed dependency, and who are the managers? The global forces. That's the most prominent countries were just managing Africa's dependency on them. And all of a sudden, call it Trump, let's say Trump, and some globalization is not working, or is not it's not advantageous now to certain big states, powerful states. And so unilateralism, especially in trade, with trade tariffs here and there, noticing that their own production, they need to produce, they need to produce, they need to have homegrown, the same things I was talking about, the same factors of development now want to be reapplied in economies like the US, and in a globalized world as it is right now, that wouldn't lead to the outcomes a country like the US wants, which is manufacturing made in US, US goods all over again, so that jobs can be created and money can remain in the US. Now, this is exactly what Africa also wants too. And this situation began to be honestly broken down and attacked. Let me use the word attacked, where he says, listen, the balance of trade between us is not fair. We're doing more. I put it in very simple language. We're doing more than you're doing for us. We are buying a lot more from you than you're buying from us. So let's rearrange this whole global order, and therefore globalization is being rewritten, if not dismantled. That's the post-Trump world order I'm talking about. Now, this Trump post-world order, like I said, every country now, especially African countries, now have the opportunity in this new unglobalized world. And that opportunity still rests on the fundamentals of development. If you're going to develop, you're going to have the fundamentals of development. Because if you're going to provide jobs for your people, then you have to innovate and produce and export. But the world, like I explained before, is not really too happy with you doing for. I give you an example of what happened quite recently. We have quite an entrepreneur in Nigeria. His name is Dangote. Most people are familiar with him. And then he has built a refinery that is pretty much saving us a lot now. But he had a lot of unnecessary obstacles to overcome over time. But that's not the story I want to bring up. I want to bring up the story that now he's producing, he's doing well. All of a sudden, there was a World Bank report saying that, you know what, he shouldn't be, I'm paraphrasing here. It's not in the best interest for the country, for Nigeria, and that was what the bank report was saying, to actually allow him be a monopoly. And by the way, according to the report, he's not only heading towards being a monopoly, he's also producing and selling at a price which is about 12 cents, or is it $12 higher than what the price would be if petroleum products were imported. This is a very important example to give to make my point. Now, I want you to understand that in 2026, the World Bank published a report a statutory report that they always publish from time to time, saying that our biggest manufacturer of any kind in our country shouldn't be allowed to operate freely as the biggest manufacturer of the product he produces, but instead, others should be allowed to import the same product and compete with him in the name of a free market, because the free market is more important than having any strategic security on such an important product. And that's what we're talking about, the sacrifice. We're lucky, economists like myself, and we talked against it, and the government listened. And today, we are not feeling the effects of the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz as much as other countries are. We are also exporting to our neighbors. We're exporting oil and finished products as far as to South Africa and to our colonial friends before, the Great Britain. So the post-Trump world order allows Africa to do the right thing. And the right thing is what? The right thing is invest in yourself. Invest in yourself irrespective of what anybody feels about it. Invest in yourself. Produce. And I go back to my first point. When you have produced, team up with your fellow African countries and make a larger market. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder, this corruption in the World Bank that leads to having double standards. So on one side, they're asking for the country to allow for importers, other importers to be importing petroleum, to create competition for the Dangote refinery. And in other cases also, they bring out reports also asking again to break up these monopolies. But yet, when they're structuring deals that are favorable to foreign companies coming and having those monopolies, when they're funding and taking actions in foreign companies that are having these monopolies, you never hear such reports. But that's also because the World Bank is operated and run by people who are working for the interests of many corporations, many governments that are not necessarily working for the interest of the African people. You have many World Bank projects where the funding is directed towards companies that are associated with World Bank consultants that are operating within those projects. So from your experience, having those realities on the ground that there's corruption at different levels of the system. And then on the other side, you do have African governments today who want to develop their countries. I believe that there are many African leaders who have taken up this mantle of sacrifice, that want to see their people develop. However, they also are operating within a space that they are constrained by lack of resources. They need more resources in order to transform their minerals into finished products and finished goods that they can export or that they can sell to their local populations. Yet, in order to get access to that capital, they have to abide to these rules or these demands of the ones who are funding. How can they overcome that? Right? From your experience, how is it possible for them to be able to overcome that?
If I may, I don't want to sound like a broken record. Okay, repeating it, but the first thing is to find one or two people. I'm speaking to the leaders in answering your question. One or two people. First of all, I'm assuming that you're a leader that has decided that he's going to sacrifice and make sure his people develop, his country develops. Then you have now one of the many tasks you have now is to find one or two other leaders that shares the same dream with you for his or her own people. You know, because you're going to find yourself having to break away from a system that you or your ancestors were not there when that system was designed. Neither was it designed to even help you. It was designed to milk you. Now, this is not personal. This is not a bashing of the colonialists. No, it makes no sense to do that, because in the world of that day, that's pretty much what had to be done. They had to maximize profits. The world was a colonial world. Grab what you can. We were not seen as equals at that time. And to be seen as equals, you need to demand a seat on the table, at the table. And the only way you can demand as much a seat at the table politically, you can protest as much, but nobody's going to give you a seat at any world order economic decision table till you've earned it. And the only way you earn it is by bargaining power. And one single country, even with the sacrifice in Africa, does not have enough bargaining power to have a seat at the table. Your seat at your table, you nice leader that is sacrificing, your seat at the table is in unison with the other African leader. With the other African leader that is like-minded like yourself. I hope I got that. That's it. So you find out that there's a theme that keeps on replaying here. And it's not about activism. It's not about how much we talk about it. It's not about how many meetings we meet about it. It's about one person deciding that this is enough. And it's not about hating your they're not the enemies. The European Union and the World Bank and the IMF they are not Africa's enemies. No, let's state that. They are representatives of a system that was formed for their own benefit. Now we have come of age. Our job now is not to hate them. Our job is to prove that we've come of age and we say, hello, we need to change things. Hello, I hope I'm making a.
You're making a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's not about hating, because in many cases, if you can produce a game plan that makes sense and will benefit yourself, you find out that it is very possible. And I have a lot of strategic plans that benefits Africa and also benefits the very colonial powers that we always speak against, like France. But it's not published. It's published, but it's not out there. So in our quest for development, I believe that what we need to do is to present a new world order to even our friends in France, our friends in England, and everybody that was a world power in the current and the past was a world power in the past world orders, because we need them to move forward too. They need to buy from us and we need to buy from them. The only thing is, one significant thing is that we are going to add value to what we are bringing out from the ground, because we want a seat at the decision table. So things have changed. So that's right.
I agree. We need to be at the table. And what are the immediate consequences of the Iran war on Africa that you've seen, that you've noticed, and that the leaders need to be aware of and prepare for?
Yes, my brother. See, first is that there is a more direct quest for hegemony, or is it more direct, whether it was forced. It wasn't forced. It started with two countries attacking another country, or many countries attacking one country, and there are reasons for that. I'm going to look at it from the economic point of view. I believe, maybe because my glasses are economic glasses only, I believe that the main reason, amongst others, for the attack was to control oil. It's control of oil. Why? Why do I believe that? Because there was a pattern. Venezuela represents something. Greenland represents something. Iran represents something. And the common denominator is, in the most part, oil. And that's what my own theory is based on. Now, if things can be done that rashly, undiplomatically, before it used to be they find a puppet, they find somebody that can do things and is not that brash. Now it's African leaders must beware. It's more direct. We want your oil. You want help from us? What is in it for us? There's little diplomacy or reduced diplomacy in the matter. And to answer your question directly, that's what has changed, and that's what our dear leaders need to see has changed. And therefore, you need to align yourself with your brother African countries in sacrificing and keeping your dignity, having your products and keeping your right to develop your products, to develop your country is dignity. It's a human right, which you must defend. You must sacrifice to defend, to keep for your people. Now, that's the direct effect of the Iran war is the change, realizing that there is a change in the tact, in the strategy, from a more covert to an overt grab for minerals. Hello.
So this new strategy that you have seen, recently there was the Africa Forward Summit that happened this week, where France invited many African countries to come to Kenya to find different partnerships. Right before that, there were 800 French soldiers that had landed in Kenya. So most likely, there's going to be a French base in Kenya. Mm-hmm. The partnership would be framed as a training partnership, an exchange partnership, transfer of knowledge and technology. But we can see there's a pattern that it has to be enabled by African presidents. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's overt in some cases because maybe the presidents are resistant. But in many cases also, it's in the form of partnerships. It's in the form of bilateral collaborations. But at the end of the day, it's a grab for resources. How should we think about this in negotiating from a place of power? Because there's no power in isolation. Anyone who isolates himself and doesn't find a way to negotiate with global powers, to know what are the strengths of their nation, what are the resources that they have that are critical to the global world order, and then figuring out how they can have multiple options to choose from, multiple players that they can be able to negotiate with, to have leverage. It's going to be very difficult for those nations. And many African nations also don't have the same leverage because some countries are more rich than others. Nigeria, being one of the major giants, has a large population, has lots of arable land, has access to the ocean, has a very smart population that is also able to think through policies, a very large diaspora. So it has a different bargaining power than Burundi, for example. So those leaders may not necessarily be in the same position of influence. What do you think leaders, especially those who have these critical minerals and this unique position, how can they increase their leverage and increase their power, knowing that now all these partnerships, there's always this underlying new negotiation for a new way of dependency?
Remind me that I'd like to talk about the meeting that just took place with France in Kenya, okay? But before that, Africa is already becoming, with the new world order that we're seeing here, Africa is very critical. And even if it wasn't realized before, Africa's importance in world affairs, not shaping world affairs. Africa's is a difference. Africa's importance in world affairs has increased exponentially. I did not make the statement just now that Africa's importance or participation in shaping world affairs has increased. No, I didn't say that, because they're two different things. And that's where the danger is. There is now, in the deglobalization of the world, there's now a realization that the trajectory the world wants to go in the manufacturing trajectory of AI and space, and even what do I call it, smart weaponry, what is in the ground in Africa is critical. Very important for that trajectory of development that the world wants to go in happens. And if that is the case, Africa's participation, partnerships to Africa's minerals are important, and that the gateway to partnerships to Africa's minerals are through its governments. Now, the risk is that partnering without strategic, I lost my word here, strategic bargaining, without strategic bargaining. So your goals for your country must be clear. And what you have in your grounds as an African country must get you what you need to become a developed country. Any bilateral or multilateral deal that does not provide the needs, the development needs for any singular African country is exploitatory. That's the danger. If country A comes to an African country B and has a bilateral agreement, I am very sure that at this moment right now, the benefits of that African country from that agreement are not leading to new railways. Neither are they leading to adding value to the resources that they're exporting. I am dead sure that is the case. And therefore, you must permit me to call it exploitatory. And that's what we are saying. We need those sacrificial thinking leaders to come together and say, no. This is what we need. If you are going to do this, then come in here and manufacture it. If you need cobalt, then if you need a particular thing, then come in here and set up industry for the adding of value of that resource. Set it up here, and let's designate the amount of jobs of our people that we get out of the deal. I'm being very raw and as simple as I can in talking about this, because, you know, talking what we're talking about in big economic terms doesn't mean nothing. So let's break it down. That's the deal. This is what you want. You came to me because you want a bilateral thing, and I'm leaving it open. I don't want to be specific, except you ask me a specific one. But I am sure right now, in the world order we live in now, the deal that was signed yesterday or is going to be signed tomorrow, I don't know how many indigenous factories that it's going to open in the indigenous countries in Africa. I hope it does so, because if it doesn't do so, it is being exploitatory.
I think I totally agree with you on that. Doctor. And the ones that I've seen so far who have been able to negotiate in the favor of their nations are the military-led countries.
Huh. I
I've
like
seen
that
it
you went.
in Mali, in Burkina, in Niger, in Guinea. How these military leaders came to power can be debatable,
Mhm.
but the leaders that they replaced were leaders that were pro some, foreign nation. Okay, and those leaders for many years were not able to develop their nations, to execute plans either to secure their borders, in some cases, or to develop their people. And so when the military leaders came in, you can see clearly that they cut ties with a lot of the multinationals that were just exploiting the resources. And in Guinea, I saw the same. Mamadi Doumbouya said, we're going to take over all the licenses of companies who had gotten a license, who had said that they were going to process the minerals locally, but did not process them locally. And then we as the government are going to put together our own refineries so that the country can be able to process the raw materials into finished good or semi-finished goods. Now, in the old times, we would have thought, okay, they're going to kill this guy because of this thing that he said. But he and his team, because he also has surrounded himself with a very good team of Guinean technicians and experts in these different fields, they've been able to negotiate with the interest of the country first. And that's because they understood that the resources that the country has, if you don't negotiate with us, we're going to find someone else who's going to negotiate with us. And that someone else is China. And so China is going to come and invest. They're also going to make sure that the investments are secure, right? But a lot of the countries that are really struggling, for me, from what I see, are the ones who have had these colonial contracts that have been ongoing for 50, 60, 70 years, that have just been about exploitation. And the leaders in power were benefiting from those systems since then. And so many of those leaders, once the only way to get them out of power comes back again to a coup, because they keep the elections, they win the elections, they're able to continue maintaining the same system ongoing. So somehow, maybe it's the death of democracy for African countries that want to develop, because also you need a very strong leadership in order to be able to implement these type of strategies. You need to be able to have a very long-term leadership, not just this 5-year election cycle where you just have 5 years elections, then you have to change leadership again, then you change strategy again. So it's a very complex situation that we have, Doctor. And I wonder, I'm very optimistic because I know that the Africa that is today, the young people, the leaders like yourself, like myself, we're aware of the real realities of the continent. And we don't want to bargain from a place of weakness. We know the powers at hand. We know what our resources are worth. And you said something very, very important, that all the critical AI, all the critical components for developing the future of AI are in Africa.
Oh, yeah.
But the arable land as well is in Africa.
Yeah, 64% of it.
Exactly. The youth that is going to consume global products is in Africa.
Yes.
So we do have a very strong bargaining power. We just need leaders who are willing, and like you said, who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that within their time and their generation in power, it's not going to look fun, because in many of these military countries, for sure, there are opposants that are kidnapped. There's no doubt about that. There's problems with human rights, 100%, right? Yeah. But that's the same that's happening everywhere in the world.
True.
Everywhere in the world today, you have human rights issues. We see it with ICE in the US.
Everywhere.
Right?
Everywhere.
Everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the bigger question is, are you developing the nation? Is the nation moving forward? And if these countries are able to monetize their resources, like Niger with its uranium, and they can actually increase local production of rice in their country,
yes,
for them to be self-sufficient, I would say go ahead. If Mali can be able to use its gold, Burkina can use its gold to be able to strengthen its army, and defend itself against terrorists, I would say, man, good. But at the end of the day, I think it's not a clear-cut line. We have to have a lot of hope, but we also have to be realistic that the challenges are real. And we have what it takes to be able to solve them, but we really need to take some bold actions moving forward.
You mentioned I had to write a few things because when you're talking, a lot of things come to my head and I'd like to share. And unscripted. Please understand that democracy. I think this democracy definition has been used to hinder Africa. This is my innocent opinion, because there's the argument: is China not democratic? Hey, I know that in many people's definition in the Western, they are not. They're autocratic. But hey, in my definition, they are democratic. They are a democratic nation. It's their own version of democracy. And I am saying that Africa should understand that we should have our own version of democracy if that is what is going to bring jobs and human rights and human dignity and development all encompassing to our people. Now, having said that, there is not even a correlative from research. There isn't even a correlative. There is a causative. There is cause. There is a direct line between. Are you ready for me to say this?
Yes, I am. Please go ahead.
There is a direct line between powerful governments, and notice how I skirted around the word I'm supposed to use. Powerful and decisive governments and development. There is. And right now, what Africa needs is development. And therefore, if you're to conclude with me in that logic, it means that what Africa needs is powerful and decisive government.
Yep.
Not the governments that come through chaos. Sorry, chaos. You know what I mean? We don't need the chaos of what is called democracy right now. What we need is powerful, decisive governments that are willing to sacrifice. I think that is what we are seeing in the Sahel. Why do I say so? 2 days ago, I think it was the Burkina Faso representative to the UN, right? I think it was Burkina Faso, because he was giving data. And he was comparing his country. Did he say 42 years? 42 years, please quote me, either 52 or 42 years under the colonial power, and 4 years under the present dispensation. And he gave data in contrast. Let me single one thing he brought out. He said maternal health care for maternal used to cost a certain amount. And now, in these last 4 years, it now costs a mother to be able to deliver in clean sanitary health. It costs 1/5 the cost it was costing in the 42 years of his country having been out there. And he asked the question that I'm going to ask now. He said, isn't that development? He asked the second question. I think it's out there on the internet. Isn't that human rights? Because, he was under attack that they were not being propagators of human rights. So I'm an economist, and I'm just being open. What my continent needs is development. And there is a causative scientific line between that development and decisive sacrificial governments. And so if that's the way, then please let's do it. And do not forget that these people, these sacrificial governments, need to unite, which they are. Let's use the example of the of the three or four Sahel states. I do not think, and I'm watching global affairs the way everybody is. I've just put in an analysis, an economic and game theory analysis on it. And I'm saying that the Mali that we have today, and I mean this week, wouldn't have been the Mali we have this week if not for the help in unity from Niger and Burkina Faso recently.
100%. I agree.
So that example, we're going to take it, analyze it, amplify it, and spread it, because that makes my point. Mali cannot stand against its enemies alone. But look at what happened to Mali when its two neighbors to the other side came to its unification. Hello, sirs. Are you with me?
And it's what happened to Niger when it was threatened to be attacked by France, and even Nigeria at the time when the president was willing to allow for ECOWAS soldiers
to attack. Yes,
they said, protection, aggression against one is aggression against all.
Exactly, and that deterred any further aggression. So this played out in a political sense, but we need the same actions. And this is just an African. I am just an African pleading the case of Africa for its leaders to unite economically for the benefit of Africans. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you so much, Doctor. This was an exciting conversation, very insightful. I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to learn from you today on the sacrifices that African leaders need to make so that they can be self-sustaining, they can build their nations, they can have a seat at the table. And is there anything else you'd like to share? Is there any question that you would have wanted me to ask as we end this interview?
Well, you've asked a lot of questions that are really good. I would like to, not so much a question, I would like to expose the fact that the system that enables Africa remain at the bottom of the world economic chain must be broken. I think that you were brought up and I was brought up not to be dependent on anybody. We were brought up with African pride. I don't know any law of physics or economics that says that African pride of its dignity, human dignity, evaporates when it comes on the level of 54 to the UN. No. So as proud as I am to take care of my family, be independent and educate myself and provide the best for my family, that is what it's supposed to be on the global scale for African countries. So if you're underdeveloped and your people are poor and living below the poverty line in many cases, then there's work to be done. There is work to be done, and that sacrifice must be done so that Africans don't begin to converse on the wrong arguments, hating each other, xenophobic acts or no xenophobic. We love each other. And if the correct economic strategy is applied in every African country, there would be no talk of any disunity in Africa. We must be 54 countries in one body. And that's what I would like to say to Africa. It's a very big topic. Everything is geared against you. Let's have some dignity and not be where we are here in the next 5 years. The next 5 years, if you can refer people to my article, you will see that I made some predictions on where Africa will be if we do not apply this sacrificial unification strategy. Definitely. And that's all I'll say for now.
We'll put the link to your article in the description of this video. Thank you so much, Dr. Anthony. And
Thank you.
we'll definitely stay in touch. To those who have watched this show, thank you so much for joining us. Chico Unscripted exists to bring the world's most consequential voices on topics that refer to Africa, so that our leaders can be able to make good decisions and policies for the betterment of our people. Thank you so much for watching. Talk to you soon.